Hello everyone, I'm EternalOpossum, and today we're back with a series of me ranking every single chef of Hell's Kitchen per season. Last time we did season 1, so logically that means we go straight to season 2. Season two's cast is a mixed bag to say the least. While there are chefs I do unironically enjoy and root for throughout the season, at the same time however, there's chefs I either don't have too much of an opinion of, or just heavily divide me. For what it's worth, there's no one this season I do dislike by any means, unlike season 1. Also, I should mention that yes, I am aware of the uncut services existing, but for the sake of consistency, I'm only going to be going by the edit on the TV show, since that gives me more to work with. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get into every chef ranked of season 2. I do feel a little bit bad putting Marabel at the bottom spot of this list, considering how she doesn't really do much wrong. Hell, compared to a lot of chefs that come after who actually are deserving of the bottom spot, she's nowhere near as bad. In fact, I should probably mention now that just because a chef is at the bottom spot, doesn't necessarily mean I dislike them at all, or that they have pretty major problems. Trust me, there's chefs coming up that I actually do have issues with, but the thing is that while they do have problems, they do reach to bigger heights by being either kind of funny, interesting, or just not being boring. As such, those chefs avoid being at the bottom, while Marabel, well, she just kinda sucks. Yeah, that's about it. She's pretty much like Mary Ellen, where they get relatively far into a season, but the difference is that she's not hanging out with Jessica. Literally, her TV tropes page is 4 tropes long, and one of them is just a background moment. That's all there is to her. She nearly makes the blackjackets and yet doesn't do anything interesting. Hell, did you even know there's no main quote she has on the Hell's Kitchen wiki? That's how boring and forgettable she is.
Now, would you like me to fucking email that to your BlackBerry? No, chef.
So, Gabe. Yeah, he's Gabe, alright. You know that one episode of SpongeBob where SpongeBob becomes normal and says, "Hi, how are you?" He's pretty much that. He's very, very normal. Okay, he has a few other things to him, like the fact he's apparently inexperienced, which, considering the performance of the rest of the cast, that's saying something. And he's the first chef to be called up despite not being nominated and getting eliminated right after. And that's really it. Just kind of a nothing chef.
My downfall is women. I really don't feel well, but I just like women.
So, Larry is much like Gabe in that he doesn't really have too much to him, but unlike Gabe, his is a lot more circumstantial rather than anything personality related. Throughout his brief stay, he gets called lazy a lot by Ramsay, leading to the iconic moment where he just does a little jig to show motivation, and then tries to be a good old-fashioned Casanova. And then his body shuts down and he becomes the first chef to be medically eliminated. Later, I'd say is above Gabe solely for the reason that what little we do get out of him is pretty okay, all things considered. He has some mildly funny moments, and I will admit, his elimination does bring him up a bit, but really not enough to be that interesting in the long run. By the way, his survey this season was sick, and I mean, I don't think I need to make a joke, they just write themselves.
I have had 6 sons. I had them all naturally, and if I can endure that, Hell's Kitchen's gonna be nothing for me.
Back in my season 1 ranking, I mentioned how for a first boot of the entire series, you'd expect him to be notable for doing something so unbelievably stupid, something that Carol Ann didn't really do, and just kind of fell to wasted potential. Pauline, on the other hand, is more of what you expect for a terrible first boot. First, her signature dish, which was, in her own terms, undone focaccia bread, which is just a really fancy way of saying it's undercooked. I actually think you can make her dish in Minecraft. Just get 3 pieces of wheat, put them on a crafting table, and just stare at it. Voila! Undone focaccia bread. From that terrible signature dish and that one confessional where she stated it would be easy to win, it's pretty obvious she's not going to be long for the show. Sure enough, come dinner service, she fails to serve a single acceptable appetizer for an hour and a half, eventually forcing Ramsay to put Heather on the station and assign Polly as the kitchen donkey. Only thing that would make that better is if she somehow messed that up too. Unsurprisingly, she's the first boot of the season. Yeah, it's clear that Polly is way more fitting of a first boot than someone like Carol Ann. Not only that, I consider her to be the first of the many chefs who are at least a few years from receiving their pension who claimed that Hell's Kitchen will be a breeze, but then whoopsie, Hell's Kitchen is actually hard to get eliminated for it. But you know what? At least she was way better than Carol Ann.
I don't know what non-stink means in Texas, sweetheart, but fuck me!
I'll be honest with you, Sarah was probably the hardest chef to nail down a definitive ranking for because of how much I have to say about her. At least chefs coming up like Tom and Virginia, I at least had a general idea on where I would place them based on how much entertainment value I got out of them. Sarah, on the other hand, brings out a lot of mixed emotions for me. She has a lot of qualities that I heavily dislike, such as her constantly arguing back with Ramsay, and it would realistically put her at the bottom spot of this list, but at the same time, I do think she's far more interesting than the other chefs I just talked about. Wait, me talking positively about Sarah from Season 2? What heresy is this? Okay, so I think I should explain why I don't necessarily hate Sarah, and well, it's more like I have this weird tolerance towards her because I think she actually gets a pretty solid villain edit and feels a bit more like a threat. Like, as much as I do enjoy Andrew from Season 1, I'm gonna be real with you, he never really had a chance of winning considering how consistently awful he was in the kitchen. Sarah's not good, mind you, but if I had to pick between which antagonist had a better shot at winning, then I would probably pick Sarah. Plus, a lot of the cast this season is pretty shit outside of really 2 chefs, and at least one of those chefs have a pretty major flaw that Sarah doesn't have. So theoretically, Sarah had the potential to make the finals, maybe? I don't know. Essentially, she's shit, but she's less shit than others. Throughout the season, she's shown to be a manipulator to the extreme, which I don't hate really. It gives Michael vibes in a way, but there's only one issue with this. Her main target is Virginia. Now, I'll get into Virginia later, but I'm gonna be real with you, I kinda wish Sarah wasn't so tied down to Virginia and actually tried to sabotage other chefs. Yeah, it would have likely led to some nonsense, but at the same time, I think if I had the option of sabotaging either the strong chef who I had to take out in order to have a chance to win, or the chef who spent more time staying in front of Ramsay than next to me, then you bet your ass I'm targeting the strong chef. I know it's pointless complaining about what a person on an unscripted reality TV competition that aired nearly 2 decades ago didn't do, but forgive me for being slightly annoyed that the antagonist is just targeting weak chefs. Oh yeah, the way she goes out is ridiculously stupid as well. Virginia ends up winning immunity in a challenge, only for her to have her worst service yet, and then Ramsay takes away her immunity. But then at elimination, Ramsay says, "Oh, you know what? I'm actually a man of my word. Here's immunity back. Oh, by the way, if you do take it, I'm eliminating Sarah immediately because she also had a bad service, but it was not as bad as yours." I mean, who wouldn't turn down an offer like that? But at the same time, this means Sarah is eliminated in a pretty bullshit way. This feels like Ramsay is blatantly admitting that Virginia was going to be eliminated if she did take immunity back, and as such, I feel more bad for Sarah because I feel like she was screwed over. And before you say, oh, it would have been the same if Ramsay didn't give her back immunity, why did he offer her in the first place? Regardless of all that, I don't mind Sarah as much as others do, but I completely understand why she gets the hate she does.
If I think Chef Ramsay's being an asshole to be an asshole, I'll be an asshole myself.
Before I begin, can I just say that I never knew how Garrett's name was spelled? Is it with 2 R's, 2 T's, 1 T, 2 R's? Let me check. Hey, what the Garrett has a pretty interesting background of being a former prison chef, something we've rarely seen on the show, and considering that I too can blur the lines between prison chef and cafeteria lunch lady, I think he'll fit right in with this wonderful cast of characters. Garfield initially starts out fairly well, getting labeled as best of the worst on the second night after he does the bare minimum and doesn't screw up. However, as the season progresses, Garf says to get worse and worse, just barely making it into the Blackjackets after the blue team win the final 6 service. Not only that, Garfunkel is also best known for flipping the bird at Ramsay, being friends with Keith, and just being a sexist dick. Yeah, I didn't miss Gregory at all. He's pretty much an asshole to the end, but at the same time, I don't have enough energy to care about him all that much or really hate him that much.
Dude, you don't have the fucking gas on, stupid!
You know, Giacomo's much like Wendy in that he's a relatively early boot who has some elements to him, and for some reason that's enough for me to have a soft spot for him. I have no idea why, I just have an interest in chefs and really characters who don't get too much attention. I mean, for fuck's sake, when I went to Walker StalkerCon back in 2016, the only character I got pictured with was Tobin, of all characters. Anyway, Giacomo, unlike most of the cast, does seem to have some promise early on with his signature dish. Although, and don't quote me on this, apparently in an interview, he said he had pre-packaged pasta. Yeah, what is now considered a Hell's Kitchen taboo is considered best dish of the day. I believe the fact that Garrett was just begging for a good signature dish and just said, "Eeny, meeny, miny, you, Moppe, you get best dish of the day. Now go get me some Hennessy." Unfortunately, whilst nowadays Wild out of 5 signature dish was received well, his time after was a different story. He continuously messed up in the kitchen and was eventually eliminated for forgetting to turn the oven on. Also, he lied about having an order of something, but I don't really care enough. Regardless, Giacomo's alright.
The duck's burned! You're cooking in a burnt pan, you fucking dick!
So, Tom is, well, Seth, please.
He is dead.
Yeah, Tom's dead, and I just need to remind you that there are going to be jokes, just they're not personal by any means. So, while the blue team is not good by any means, Tom stands out as being the weakest among them all. I don't think of the season's cast, however, at least he didn't take an hour and a half to serve a risotto. To add on to this, Tom has a pretty poor attitude throughout the season, being accused of not taking things seriously and just being a pretty whiny dolt throughout. To add on to this, Tom has a tendency to overreact to just about the most minor injuries, like if he burns himself, he'll act like his arm got chopped off. Sounds awful, right? So, why is he in the top 5? Well, I'm gonna be honest, I think he's pretty damn funny. Granted, he's not the funniest chef of all time, but there are moments where his incompetence does get pretty damn funny. For example, there's the episode where Keith asked him to make tomato sauce, but then Gargamel found some and Keith told him, "Oh, never mind," but then he decided to continue making it anyway, proving that throughout this entire competition, he truly was lost in the sauce. And yet, Tom managed to make it all the way to the top 8, only making it there because other chefs failed harder than him. At least his final service was hilarious.
I personally think that you have a hard-on for Virginia.
Virginia is someone that tends to bring out a lot of mixed emotions for me. Not as much as Sarah, but still pretty mixed. But why is that? Well, to start off positives, or really her biggest positive, is that Virginia is pretty damn likable. She's nice, cordial towards her teammates. Overall, I'd say from a personality standpoint, she gets the bronze medal for most likable. Cool. However, what makes her mixed for me is, to the surprise of absolutely no one, how far she makes it into the season. She absolutely sucked in the kitchen, so much so that the moment the red team lost, you could bet your entire life savings that she would be a nominee. It's to the extent she has the worst nomination record in history, being nominated every single time she was eligible. Granted, she did have a good performance at the Final 7 that netted her best of the worst, but outside of that and challenges, she has as much of a chance of winning as David Zaslav did at being beloved by animation fans. However, that one good performance which correlated with sending home the one chef that had somewhat of a chance of getting it over her, although, to be fair, that service was pretty bad, that meant she was bound for the Black Jackets. It was also around this time that the other chefs started to feel like she was being favorited, and admittedly some of it felt like them being sore losers, while other instances I felt like there was a point to how they acted. Eventually she would make the finals, although not without some controversy, and proceed to completely nuke her already low chances of winning by picking Keith, who hated her, and Tom and Giacomo, who sucked. And not only that, told Giacomo and Tom that they sucked and Keith would pick up the slack. It's like replacing Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill and replacing it with a bunch of middle schoolers. If you already didn't have a chance of finishing at the top, then what chance do these middle schoolers have? Unsurprisingly, Virginia gets curb stomped in the finale after she fails to serve all her diners, which is still the biggest low in any finale. Overall, if I had to pick where she should have went, I'd say at the Final 4 after her worst service yet, and no, Ramsay doesn't give her immunity back. Despite all that, I don't hate Virginia in the slightest. I think she's pretty likable, only being brought down by how far she makes it into the season.
Keith, do me a favour. Just pull your pants up a little bit, yes? You got it, chef.
Oh boy, another dead chef. Once more, jokes toned down, but expect them. So, Keith, unlike most of the blue team, actually isn't that bad overall. He's capable enough in service with the odd mistake coming by, and even then, they're fixable. This is something that Ramsey takes notice of, and throughout the competition, seemingly takes Keith under his wing a bit, giving him advice and telling him that he can be a good cook if he just lost the attitude, took some leadership ability. Something that Keith never takes seriously and would much rather act like Vanilla Ice. Regardless, Keith emerges as pretty much the one true threat to the season's frontrunner in Heather, who he also forms a friendship with along with Garrett, and by the time the Final Four rolls around, Keith and Heather are pretty much neck and neck for the most part. That is until the past segment where he does a downright horrendous job and gets eliminated over Virginia, but not before he says Ramsey has a hard-on for her. Keith was someone I was pretty okay with throughout the season, all things considered. I thought it was interesting how he was really the only solid chef on the blue team, aside from Guard Chump at the start, and the fact that Ramsey knows that and tried to nurture him in a way was pretty interesting. It's kind of like Virginia in a way, but the main difference is that Keith at the very least was more consistent than her in the kitchen, so it made sense as to why Ramsey would believe in him a bit, up until his elimination. Well, now that we're here, I think it's time to answer a question that I've been asking myself for a long time. Is Keith robbed? Technically yes, but I do understand to an extent why it happened. It's because Keith was just downright awful as a leader. Look, I would understand if he were a consistent leader for the blue team, but he's not. He's given chance after chance by Ramsey, telling him to step up and become a leader for the blue team, and not only did he not do that, but he seemed to resist it. And if you're going to pretty much do that, then what the fuck did you think was going to happen once your leadership gets tested? Like, why do you think Heather was switched over there in the first place? It's because you didn't step up, and look what happens. I'm sorry it seems like I'm being unnecessarily harsh, but when you avoid trying to bet yourself to give yourself a better shot at winning despite having so many cards in your favor, including the man who's deciding who wins giving you so many pieces of advice, then I'm gonna be honest, the only thing that's robbing you is yourself. Also, if you're wondering, the main reason Keith is number 3 on the list, despite all the stuff I had to say about it, is because his placement annoyed me less than Virginia's.
I am proud to be a redneck. I don't have to be the big dog, but I'm not gonna let anybody run over me.
Another dead chef. Just gotta mention that. I mentioned earlier that there was really only one chef who I felt had somewhat of a chance of making it over Virginia. Well, here she is. Rachel started out pretty damn well, all things considered, having one of the slightly better signature dishes of shrimp and chocolate sauce. Hey, I said slightly for a reason. Anyway, she's one of the better chefs of the season initially, with her vying for the position of leader with Sarah and Heather, and it's even enough for Ramsey to take notice in the 4th episode. The 4th episode, however, is where things would start to fall apart for her. After her friend and Heather switched over to the blue team, Sarah and Rachel would clash even more for the position of leader, and that would result in Rachel's performances taking massive hits. She does badly enough that she offers to nominate herself in the 4th episode, and come the 5th episode, she completely tanks all chances she previously had at making the blackjack by doing horrible on the meat station, and considering that Virginia was labeled best and the worst, Rachel will wind up getting eliminated. Rachel is someone that is a bit tricky to talk about in depth because of the elephant in the room. Not that she isn't likable, she absolutely is. I admire her determination, and her friendship with Heather is honestly one of the more underrated aspects of the season. It's just that, well, there's a few quotes she has in this season that are really sad to listen to knowing what happened. Keep in mind, this is not a criticism at all. No way in hell am I going to make it one. But it's just something I feel like I need to point out. But hey, Rachel's good, all things considered. Really one of the only 2 chefs I like unironically.
My name's not Babe. My name's not Hun. It's not Honey. It's Heather.
Heather's someone I already talked about before in my winners ranking list, so I won't go into too much depth on her. But considering she was not only ranked number 9 on my favorite winners list back then, and is part of the winners list I do genuinely like, it should be a surprise that I enjoy her. Heather starts out as easily the strongest chef in the competition, saving the appetizer station in the 1st episode, and then receiving a burn and yet continuing to lead her team despite being in pain. It becomes pretty clear that not only is Heather the undisputed leader of the red team, even with Sarah and Rachel vying for it, but she's the frontrunner of the season. Eventually she switched over to the blue team since no leaders are coming from there, and the blue team are dropping fast. While there, she forms a friendship with sorts with Keith and a slightly less strong one with Godzilla. Unsurprisingly, she makes the blackjackets with really the only time she didn't seem like she would make it being when she had an awful performance in the 5th service, but luckily for her, the red team lost. From then on, she continues to be strong, pretty much leaving everyone behind, and finally capping it up by completely curb-stopping Virginia in the finale to win. Admittedly, Heather's win is insanely predictable, and I would argue it's the most predictable in the show's history, considering no one else really comes close to her in terms of potential. But hey, I still enjoy her, for she is likable and pretty much a badass. Well, Season 2. It's a season, alright. There's no chefs I particularly dislike, but at the same time, there's really only 2 chefs I actually enjoy throughout the whole season. I would say personally, this cast is not as good as Season 1's, simply because Season 1's cast to me reaches bigger heights. Anyways, here's the ranking for Season 2. No F tier, but still a number of mixed bags. That being said, that'll be all for Season 2, and I'll see you next time for Season 3. EternalOpossum out.